Story number 1. This happened back in 2012 to 2013, I think. When I was about 13 years old. I've never talked about it with anyone, except for my dad who was there with me. Years later, I get goosebumps thinking about it, and I'm curious if anyone else has experienced something similar. After visiting a friend's house for a couple hours, my dad had come by to pick me up. It was in the evening and had just gotten dark. My mom was waiting for us to get home so we could all eat dinner. After picking me up, my dad had to drive about 15 minutes on the long, winding dark road surrounded by nothing but forest. To give some context, we lived on a nearby military base at the time, and this road was attached to the back entrance of the base, which wasn't used very much. However, my dad liked using this entrance because it was closer to our house and it would have taken us a lot longer to get home if we drove all the way to the main entrance on the other side of the base. My dad picked me up from my friends and we start driving home. I'm in the passenger seat. We're talking about random things, school, my sister, what mom might have made for dinner. We're driving up the long road and it is very, very dark. There aren't any other cars on the road. All you can see when you look out the window are the trees and lots of shadows. My dad and I had been talking to each other, but after a couple of minutes it seemed as if our conversation slowly faded out. I remember sitting there in my seat and feeling cold all of a sudden, which was strange because the heat was on in the car. Gradually, I started to feel a weird sensation on the back of my head, as if I was being watched. I stayed still and silent, keeping my eyes on the road in front of me. I saw my dad out of the corner of my eye, doing the same. I figured he was probably just focused on the road and not thinking about anything in particular. The car we were driving in was a minivan with 2 rows of seats behind us. For some weird reason, I began to feel a very strong impulse to not look behind me, and like something was in the very back row of the car, and if I didn't say anything or acknowledge it, there wouldn't be a problem. I think 2 minutes went by. Felt like longer. Until I saw we were approaching the back gate of the military base with all of its bright lights. We checked in at the gate and drove to our house. We pulled into the driveway, and while the weird feeling of something in the back seat had gone away, what I thought was strange was that neither my dad or I made a move to get out of the car once he parked and turned the car off. We also still hadn't talked in a couple of minutes. Okay, I thought maybe he's just being slow getting out. But he didn't budge after a couple seconds. I turned and looked at him, wondering what was up. And interestingly, he was already looking at me with a funny expression on his face. What? I asked him. He shook his head and kind of gestured towards the back of the van before saying, "When we were driving home, did you feel something weird? Like someone was in the back of the car?" I got instant goosebumps and said yes. I told him I had felt it and didn't want to say anything about it while it was happening. I remember he laughed kind of nervously and said he hadn't wanted to say anything either, or even look at the rearview mirror. He said he kept his eyes on the road and didn't look back. I don't know how to explain it, what it was, or why we both felt the same thing at the same time. But that will definitely stick with me forever. Story number 2. This is a true story. I'm an adult, mentally stable, and I've never had anything like this happen before. This was not caused by stress, trauma, drugs, alcohol, or exhaustion. I I don't suffer from anxiety or panic disorders. I have experienced sleep paralysis once or twice in my life, and this was nothing like that. I was fully awake and completely conscious. I woke up in the middle of the night with my heart pounding like I was in real physical danger. The fear was instant. I heard a floor squeak, and that sound is what woke me. My entire body went into fight mode. I felt the urge to stand up and fight immediately. My senses were tingling. My mind felt razor sharp, and I had that intense adrenaline rush that makes you incredibly focused, like the moment right before a fight. We have a large mirror on our wardrobe. When I woke up, my head was tilted toward it. In the reflection, I saw something standing over my baby's bed, just watching. I did not feel paralyzed. I chose not to move for about 10 seconds because I was trying to understand what I was seeing and decide what to do. During that time, it had the faintest resemblance to my wife, but I knew it wasn't her. Something about it felt deeply wrong. The moment I made the decision to move, it was as if it realized that I was awake and it vanished instantly. I lifted my head and looked directly. My wife was asleep next to me in bed. She had never left the bed. What I saw was not her, and I am absolutely certain that I was not dreaming. I've never felt fear like that in my life. Not stress, not panic. This was raw, instinctive terror. What makes it even worse is that it happened right next to my child. I don't know what this was. I'm open to scientific explanations, but whatever it was, it felt 100% real in every possible way. Has anyone experienced something like this? Story number 3. Backstory. My father was huge into paranormal investigating. He ran his own paranormal group for a while and actually gained traction for a few years before certain stuff happened. So, growing up, I was somewhat around paranormal stuff, but sheltered. Hi, I wanted to share this experience I had when I was younger, maybe around 10 to 12 years old, because this one sticks with me the most. I'm going to keep it short and simple. I'm sure I'm leaving out details because this happened as a child, and this was more than a decade ago. My father took me and my mother, both were involved in their own paranormal group, to some abandoned buildings far in some county. I, being a kid and thought this stuff was cool and wanted to be involved, I brought my own camera, new batteries, everything. Specifically remember putting 2 new AA Duracell batteries in my camera that I've used prior for other things. Parents drove up to this group of buildings, left me in the minivan. They parked me in front of some old school building, 2 stories, very old style brick. House that had 4 windows in the front, 2 on the lower level, 2 on the top floor. Building looked dull red. I stayed in the vehicle for the entire time, but for whatever reason, I could not stop looking at the upper left window. The window had curtains behind it, kind of a wavy pattern to it, except there was a wider gap to the wavy pattern compared to all the other curtains. I remember that I seriously was attracted to that specific spot in the window. While in their minivan, I pulled out my camera and took a few photos of that window. took maybe 2 or 3, but then the batteries died. Pissed me off because I had just put new batteries in and I had no problems with that camera at all. Even after the batteries died, I just couldn't stop looking at that specific window. Brought a Nintendo DS with as well. That was also fully dead after my camera died. Anyways, sometime later, I remember plugging the SD card into my dad's laptop and zoomed in on the window and got spooked. When zoomed in, I saw a girl, maybe around the same age I was, probably 4, 10, 5, 01. Had hair that went down to her shoulders and bangs. It was just her chest and head, as if she was short or peeking over the window staring at me. Full facial features. I remember seeing a face, nose, mouth, egged. I remember seeing that, and once I gained my composure, I called my father in, and I was so excited to show him that I captured a ghost or something paranormal. I remember my dad called my mother in. She looked at the computer and said, "Holy shit." They talked for a bit, and then that's the last memory I have of that photo. I've talked to my parents about this incident, and even to this day, they refuse to acknowledge that this existed, even though I'm almost in my 30s now. Still don't understand why they refuse to acknowledge it, but I know 100% this happened because I was upset later on that every time I brought it up, as a kid they played it off like it was nothing, and then later denied I even took photos. I can remember where exactly I was standing when I showed my father the photo, my mom's reaction, and how quick they brushed it off and never spoke of it again. But I can remember her face in the photo clear as day, and the feelings I felt staring at the window. I know that this is a true memory that happened to me because the sun ended up setting behind the building I was parked in front of. I was in the mid-row, driver's side seat of the vehicle, so we were parked north. At one point we heard a gunshot, but it was hunting season and was there for a few hours. I was checked up on regularly, was just happy to be brought along. I wish I still had the photo. I've had a lot of paranormal encounters, IMO, more so years after this, but this was my first time that I believed I had encountered something paranormal. Story number 4. A few years ago, me and my son were living in a rental house while our own home was being built. It was a really nice place, and my son had the converted loft as his bedroom. Huge room, walk-in wardrobe, and an ensuite bathroom. You could see from where we were standing. One night, I was talking to him, actually telling him off about something. And as I was mid-sentence, I glanced up toward the bathroom doorway. That's when I saw it. A very tall, pitch-black stick figure shape in the rough outline of a person. Long, thin limbs, extremely skinny. And the head, the only way I can describe it is like a long, stretched, black oval or silhouette. It wasn't solid like a person, more like a shadow standing in the open. The second it seemed to realize I'd noticed it, it jerked back and almost retracted into the bathroom. It didn't run like a person, it just pulled back quickly and disappeared. I absolutely saw it, clear as day, but I said nothing. The last thing I wanted was to freak my son out when he had to sleep in that room. 2 seconds later, genuinely, No more than that, my son suddenly screamed and said, "Dad, someone just ran into the bathroom." He described the exact same thing I'd just seen. I told him not to be silly and that he was imagining things, but trust me, I saw it too. Exactly the same tall, jet black, stick figure shape. Has anyone else ever seen anything like this? A tall stick figure shadow with a long black head. I'm honestly curious because it's one of the clearest, most undeniable things I've ever witnessed. And the fact we both saw it at the same moment still gives me chills. Which story did you enjoy the most? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any future creepy stories. I'll see you in the next video.